Well, what do we have here? Looks like some Tenneco load adjusting shocks. What are those for? Oh yeah. I wanted to add some extra load capacity to my truck, and the helper springs that you can buy, or the, I should say the add-a-leafs that you can buy, add about 2 inches to the height. I really didn't want to change the height of the truck that much, but I wanted to add about 700 to 1,000 pounds more capacity onto it, mainly because when I'm towing that big trailer with 5 or 6 tractors on it, my truck knows squat. I don't want my truck to know squat. I want it to be nice and level. So these are actually for a 2011 to 2014 or a 2010 to 2014 F150, because they don't make them for my truck. But what I did to get the length on them was basically jacked the frame of the truck up far enough that the rear tire was coming off the ground, and measured the distance pin to pin for the shocks. And these are about 1 inch longer, fully extended, than the travel I have, and the compression of the truck, these are about 1 inch shorter when they're fully compressed. So I'd have to get the measurements for them. The original measurements for my truck said the shocks needed to be like 29 inches and 16 collapsed, which is, or yeah, 16 collapsed, and I think these are about 28 and a half fully open, or 28 fully open and 15 and a half collapsed. So they still have about the same amount of travel, but these will actually collapse further than the other ones, and there's still plenty of travel up. The truck only had about 26 vertical travel, or vertical length, when I had the truck fully sagged out. So that's what I'm doing on my truck. So these were about $104 shipped, $107 shipped, something like that, from Advanced Auto Parts with a coupon. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in my truck. So here's the original shock on the left next to the new ones. They're about 2 inches longer, I think, but again, when I unhooked the bottom of this shock, the original one, it actually hit the ground. That's how long that thing is. It's way too long for this truck. And I think they might have used these in, like, you know, basically all the 4x4s. So here's my truck after I put the new shocks in. And you can definitely tell there's a lot more wheel gap in the back than there is in the front. If I back up a little bit, you'll be able to see there's quite a bit of rake to the truck now, which is exactly what I wanted. When you're towing, obviously if I put a leveling kit in this and I went and towed with it, the rear end would sag lower than the front again. So instead of putting a leveling kit in it and trying to level the whole truck out, I wanted to raise the back up a little bit. And the shocks that I put in there, I think they probably added about 1.5 inches of lift to the truck. So you can see the coil spring on the shock right here. I think they added about 1.5 inches to lift to the truck. They were fairly easy to put in. The problem with them is because the spring is so stiff when you're putting them in, you basically got to jack the frame way up, let the axle sag all the way down, and then I had to use a bottle jack to compress the shock enough to get it into the axle, because they're longer than the travel of the truck, which is what you want. Because if you put a shock in that's shorter than the travel of the truck, you're actually going to have the shock top out, and you can blow the seal out and destroy the shock. Same thing with, you want the shock to compress further than the suspension in the truck does, because if you put it in and it compresses, if the compression distance is shorter than the travel of the truck, you'll blow the shock out as well. So in this particular case, the ride height's definitely better than it was. They improved the feel of the truck quite a bit in the rear end anyway. I mean, I've driven this thing for 85,000 miles since it was brand new, and it definitely made an improvement. So easy $100 and something, $110 or $120, whatever I spent on them was well worth it. I'll let you guys know how they do when I tow. Pretty soon I'm going to put a trailer on it and load it up with some tractors so I can see how it tows with like 5 or 6 tractors on it. So that's my review. They are overload shocks and they work really well in the Ford. They're for like an 09 to 14 F150. They don't list them for this because the shocks for this truck are actually much longer than they need to be. I don't know why. Maybe because they put the same shocks in the FX4 and the Raptor that they do in this thing, but Those are for an 09 to 14, something like that, or a 10 to 14 F150, and they work perfectly fine in this. They're the same width, they're the same bolt size and everything, so they work great. That's another short little video from Cranky Motorsports.